This part of the video is Monday the 1st of February's lesson, and today the 2.2 success criteria is I can use knowledge of multiplication and division to find simple fractions of a broader range of quantities. In particular, boys and girls, we are going to be finding non-unit fractions today. So did you know there are different types of fractions? There are two different types. One is called a unit fraction and one is called a non-unit fraction. Unit fractions is a fraction where the numerator, so that's the top number, is a 1, and the denominator, so the bottom number, it can be any other whole number. A non-unit fraction, boys and girls, is when the numerator, so the top number, is more than 1, and the denominator can still just be any whole number. So an example of this is, boys and girls, Emma and Sophie share a pizza that was cut into 6 pieces. Sophie ate 1/6 of the pizza and Emma ate 5/6 of the pizza. Which of these two is the non-unit fraction? So was it 1/6 or 5/6? Look carefully at the numerator and it will tell you. So the answer was 5/6 was a non-unit fraction because the numerator was greater than 1. So how do we go about finding non-unit fractions then, boys and girls? It is very important that we can use our multiplication and division skills for this. So if, for example, you were asked to find 1/3 of a number. So 1/3 of the number, for example, 21. If you were asked to find 1/3 of 21, how would you go about finding 1/3? So hopefully you know from previous learning that when we're using our fractions to find them, we're actually using our division skills a lot of the time. We're dividing it into 3 groups, and the denominator, so the bottom number, often or always tells us what we have to divide by. So if we're trying to find 1/3, we're dividing by 3. So we need to know our times tables, our multiplication and division facts. So the 3 times table then, 21 is in the 3 times table. So if I had 21 and I was to divide it by 3, my answer would be, and hopefully you said it was 7. 3 times 7 is 21. 21 divided by 3 is 7. So 1/3 of 21 is 7. 1/3 of 21 is 7. If, boys and girls, I wanted to find 2/3 of 21. 2/3 of 21. So this is when we have to use a mixture of both division and multiplication. So the first thing we would do is we would find 1/3 of 21, which I've already done, is 7. And to find 2/3, we'd have to multiply that answer by 2 to get 2 of them. So 1/3 of 21 is 7. So 2/3 would be 2 times that amount. What is 2 times 7, boys and girls? The answer would be 14. Okay? So 2/3 of 21 would be 14. So that's how we're going to find this out today, boys and girls. We're first of all, step number 1, going to divide, and then step number 2, multiply our answer. Let's look at another example. Okay, so as I said, let's recap our strategy for today. It has 2 steps. So step 1 is we divide the number by the denominator, and then step 2, we multiply that answer by the numerator. So the next example then was if I was asked to find 2/3 of 15. 2/3 of 15. So first of all, I have to divide by the denominator, which is 3 in this instance. So we're splitting it into 3 equal groups here, boys and girls. So what is 15 divided by 3? So let's find 1/3. 15 divided by 3, so you think of your 3 times table. What do you times 3 by to get 15? The answer is 5. So 1/3 of 15 is 5. So 2/3, boys and girls, that's 2 times that amount because there's 2 of them. So 2/3 of 15 is, this is step 2 now, where we have to multiply by the numerator. So we're multiplying that answer by our numerator, which is 2. 5 times 2 is 10. So 2/3 of 15 is 10. Let's try another example, boys and girls, using the same strategy where we divide by our denominator and then multiply by our numerator. So let's try quarters this time. So if I was asked to find 3/4 of 16. 3/4 of 16. So when we're quartering something, we're splitting it up into 4 equal groups. So the first thing we're going to do then is divide by 4 to find 1/4 of 16. Again, we have to use a multiplication and division facts. 16 is in the 4 times table. 16 divided by 4 is 4. But remember, we were asked to find 3/4, so we have to multiply that answer by the numerator there to get 3/4 of 16. So 3/4, we're timesing our answer by the numerator there. 4 times 3 is 12. So 3/4 of 16 is 12. And last example, boys and girls. Still using the exact same strategy. Say you were asked to find 3/10 of the number 40 this time. 3/10. So step 1 is we have to divide by the denominator to find how many equal parts we're splitting it into. So this one is 10 equal parts. So we have to divide 40 by 10. 1/10 of 40 is then 4. And our next step then is we have to multiply that answer by the numerator. So 1/10 is 4, so let's find what 3/10 would be. So let's multiply our answer by 3. 3 times 4 is 12 again, boys and girls. So 3/10 of 40 is 12. So that's your steps today, boys and girls. To find non-unit fractions of an amount, we have to divide by the denominator to find how many equal parts it's split up into, and then we have to multiply by the numerator. Okay? If you do have any questions, then get in touch with your teacher on Teams or Class Dojo. Thank you and good luck. So this is Tuesday the 2nd of February's video, and the 2.2 success criteria is that I can use my knowledge of multiplication and division facts to create equivalent fractions. So first of all, let's think about that word equivalent. Have you heard that word before? Could you turn to somebody at home, if possible, and explain to them what you think the word equivalent means? The word equivalent, it means equal to. If something has an equal value or an equal amount. So when we're looking for equivalent fractions, we're looking for fractions that have an equal amount. I'm going to look just now at my fractions wall here. I've put this link to this website onto your useful resources section in your task today. So if I look, for example, at the first one here, if I tap that, it shows us that we have one whole. So if you imagine, for example, a whole chocolate bar that's not been touched, it's not been eaten in any way or split up at all. There is 1/2. What's bigger, 1 whole or 1 half. You can clearly see there that the whole is bigger than 1 half. If I tap the second half there, you can see that 2 halves are equal to 1 whole. They are equivalent to each other. Let's try and think what fractions are equal to 1 half. Is 1 quarter the same size as 1 half? No, it's smaller, isn't it? Is 2 quarters the same size as 1 half? The answer is yes. You can see that 2 of those quarters are equal to 1 half. So 1 half and 2 quarters are equivalent fractions. What else could we find that is equivalent to 1 half and 2 quarters? There's 1/8. Can you turn to your partner or somebody at home and guess how many eighths would be equivalent to 2 quarters or 1 half? Let's see. So there's 2/8. Three-eighths and 4/8. So these are all equivalent fractions, boys and girls. 1 half, 2 quarters and 4/8. What's that fraction there, boys and girls? 1/3. Is it equivalent to any of the fractions above? No. There's 2/3. Is it equivalent? Again, no, 2/3 is now bigger than that, so that is not an equivalent fraction. So I would suggest, boys and girls, that you use this tool, which like I say is in your useful resources part of your task, and have a little play around with this just to see if you can find some equivalent fractions. But I'm going to show you another method to find equivalent fractions in case we don't have a fraction wall available to us. So I'll use one of the fractions that we just looked at, 1 half. And we saw in the fraction wall there that 2 quarters was equal to 1 half. And we also saw that 4/8 was equal to 1 half. So like I say, sometimes we don't have the fraction wall available to us, so we have to be able to use our multiplication skills to find equivalent fractions. So we can multiply a fraction by a number to get us an equivalent fraction. So if I was to multiply 1 half, for example, by the number 2, I would end up with the fraction 2 quarters, because 1 times 2 is 2 and 2 times 2 is 4. Now you will notice that I treated the numerator and the denominator the exact same. I multiplied them by the same number. That is very, very important when trying to create equivalent fractions. What would I have times 1 half by to get 4/8? Can you turn to a partner or somebody at home just now and tell them, what would I have multiplied 1 half by to get 4/8? And if you said that I multiplied them by 4, you would be totally right. Because 1 times 4 is 4 and 2 times 4 is 8. So 4/8. So boys and girls, as I said, we can use our multiplication skills to find these equivalent fractions. Let's look at another example. If I had 2/3, and I wanted to find an equivalent fraction, I could multiply this by any number really, as long as I multiplied the numerator and the denominator by the same thing. So let's try and multiply it by 5 and see what I get. So what is 2 times 5, boys and girls? Can you tell the person next to you if you have someone? What is 2 times 5? Or just say it out loud if you're by yourself. 2 5s are 10. What about 3 times 5? The answer is 15. So 2/3 are equal to 10/15ths. Now, like I say, I could multiply that really by any number that I wanted. So I tried 5, let's try another one. If I wanted to multiply that by 4, for example, 2 times 4 is 8, 3 times 4 is 12. 2/3 is equal to 8/12. These are equivalent fractions. Why don't I go back to my fraction wall and see if that's right? So 2/3 and 8/12. So 2/3 is there. Let's see, there's 1/12, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So are they the same size then, boys and girls? 2/3 and 8/12. And yeah, they do. They cover the same amount there. So 2/3 and 8/12 are equivalent to each other. So we're using, remember boys and girls, our multiplication skills to find equivalent fractions today. So top tip, you must multiply the numerator, the top number, and the denominator, the bottom number of the fraction, by the same number to create your equivalent fractions, okay? If you do have any questions, please get in touch with your teacher on Teams or on Class Dojo. Thank you for listening and good luck, boys and girls. This is Wednesday, the 3rd of February's 2.2 lesson, and today's success criteria is I can reduce common fractions to their simplest form using my knowledge of multiplication and division. So what exactly is simplifying a fraction? To simplify or reduce a fraction means to make the fraction as simple as possible. Why would we say 4/8 when really we could say 1/2? And it shows you there all the different equivalent fractions. Now we learned that yesterday, what equivalent fractions were. So 4/8 is equal to 2/4 is equal to 1/2. So 1/2 is its simplest form, boys and girls. So how do I simplify a fraction? So method 1 is to try and divide the numbers. A bit like what we did yesterday, when we have to divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So look here, we have 24 over 108, 24 108ths. And we've chosen to divide that by 2 first of all. So 24 divided by 2 is 12, 108 divided by 2 is 54. Now that's not its simplest form because 12 and 54 can be divided again by 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 54 divided by 2 is 27. And again, we can't stop there because again 6 and 27 can still be divided further, this time by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2 and 27 divided by 3 is 9. Now can you think of anything that both 2 and 9 can be divided by at this point? No. 2 and 9 are not divisible by any of the same numbers, so that's as far as we can go. So the fraction simplifies to 2/9. Looking at this example here, if we're trying to find the simplest form of 10/35ths, how do we decide what we divide these numbers by? So it explains here that dividing by 2 is not going to work, because can you divide 35 by 2 and get an exact number? The answer is no, you would end up with a decimal number or a remainder. So we can't divide 35 by 2, so we can't use 2 to divide them. Think about dividing by 3. 3 is not divisible, 10 is not divisible by 3. Again, you would have a decimal or a remainder of some sort. 4 is not going to work either because 2 didn't work and they have very similar multiples in their times tables. But 10 and 35 are both divisible by 5. They're both in the 5 times table. So 10 divided by 5 is 2 and 35 divided by 5 is 7. So it simplifies to 2/7. So we can use division to help us to do this, boys and girls, but that was a lot of work. We had to divide those lots and lots of different times. Is there maybe a quicker way that we can do that? And the answer is yes, we can use something called the greatest common factor. So if we simplify the fraction 8/12, so we can divide the number both 8 and 12 by 2. But if we did that, we'd have to divide it again, boys and girls, because it wouldn't be in its simplest form. So we have to think, what times table is both 8 and 12 in? So they're both in the 2 and they're both in the 4. So the largest number that goes exactly into both 8 and 12 is 4. That's called the greatest common factor. So we divide both the top and the bottom by 4. And that gives us the simplest form of 2/3, boys and girls. So let's look at an example of this then. If I asked you to simplify the number 6/10, can you think what are these are both divisible by? So what can I divide both these numbers by? So yes, they are both divisible by 2. Is there any other ones? Nope, you're right. So the highest common factor that these can both be divided by is 2. So 6 divided by 2 gives you 3. And 10 divided by 2 gives you 5. So 3/5. And that number cannot be simplified any further because there's not a common factor that both 3 and 5 can be divided by. They're not in the same times table as each other. Let's try another example, boys and girls. Say I had the number 30/100ths. 30/100ths. Can you think what these can both be divided by just now? Think of your times tables. What number or what times table is both 30 and 100 in? And you'd be right if you said that they were both in the 10 times table because they're both multiples of 10. So the highest common factor these can be divided by is 10. 30 divided by 10 is 3. 100 divided by 10 is 10. Can you think of anything that both 3 and 10 can be divided by? No, they don't share any common factors, so the simplest form of this is 3/10. One last example then, boys and girls. If you had 4/20ths. Now let's think, what can 4 and 20 both be divided by? So they can both be divided by 2. Is there any other things that they could both be divided by? Hopefully you recognise they were both on the 4 times table. So we're going to divide by 4 then, boys and girls. So that way we only have to do one step. If I divided it by 2, I'd have to divide it again because it wouldn't be in its simplest form. So the greatest common factor they share is 4, so we're going to divide by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 20 divided by 4 is 5. Okay, so it's 1/5 is its simplest form. So just to recap, today then, boys and girls, we're using our division skills and our knowledge of multiplication to reduce common fractions to their simplest form. And remember, you're trying to find the greatest common factor, the biggest number they're both divisible by, to help you to do this. If you do have any questions, please get in touch with your class teacher on Teams or on Dojo. And thank you for listening and good luck, boys and girls.